Today's guest is Karen Ericson, and Karen, believe it or not, is on my newsletter list. And she reached out to me to ask me a question or say something about a recent newsletter, as some of my people on my newsletter do. But when she did that, we got into this back and forth conversation in email, and one thing led to another. And I just heard her share about how she's had all this personal growth. She's my age. In fact, we're 2 weeks apart in age, which is great. I thought that was a really cool connection. And she's a grandma, but she was just this person that reached out with no intention whatsoever, no intention to get on my podcast. No, she's not, doesn't have a business. She wasn't trying to market herself or anything. She was just this nice person, stranger, as I like to say, on the internet, although it was email, which comes from the internet, obviously, because she wouldn't have met me if she hadn't been on the internet in some way, having connected with me and knowing I had a newsletter. So she shared with me that she had this experience, and I'm not going to share. You'll have to listen to the episode to hear what that personal experience was. But she has had this incredible personal growth. She's been on this mission, this journey to expand. And she is a retired school teacher. She had to take care of ailing parents. She has 3 adult kids. All these things that she and I have in common, and you might have in common as well. And she'd been married, long time, husband, no divorce. Like a lot of people, they find themselves through divorce, like me. But she didn't. But she just had this desire to learn more about who Karen is, to live life more fully and more happily, to live a sparked second half. And I thought, here she is, just your everyday normal person, normal grandmother who is doing the things that you need to do to be happy and to be lit up about your life. And it is a glorious thing to meet somebody like her and to know that she's found her way into this beautiful phase of her life. And she's just getting started. And what I also learned is that she created this Facebook page. And again, no business. She has no business. Doesn't have a course or a book that she's trying to market. She just created this Facebook page because she wants to be positive light in somebody else's life. And isn't that a great thing? When you do that, that brings more happiness. Instead of like trying to seek out what it is that you can gain from something, she just wants to give. And she just wants to give that light. And we can all do it. You can do it. And so I thought she would be a great person to share what she's done, how she's done it, what her journey has been, what she's learned along the way, in the hopes that she can inspire you as a listener. So let's hear Karen's story and what big thing she did recently that is pretty crazy, but anyone can do. So let's hear her story now. Welcome to another episode of Living Your Spark Second Half. I have a very special guest with me today. Well, all my guests are special, but this one is a little different than who I normally have. So welcome, Karen Ericson.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes. Karen is somebody who is on my email list. And what I love about what you did, Karen, is you just reached out with no intention other than to say, thank you for your inspiration, as I think all you
Yes.
said.
Yes.
And I love the fact that when you reached out, you shared that you feel sparked, or
Mm-hmm.
I forget the verbiage you used, but it was clear that you had made changes in your life
Mm-hmm.
that had made you what you felt is a better person, that made you happier.
Right.
Yeah. And,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. And there's been some personal growth in the
Mm-hmm.
process. And so it was funny that because I started to think, and I think I was busy, and it was a couple weeks later I messaged you, but I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to know more about what you did that
Okay.
changed your life. I wanted to know what made you change? What did you do that changed? Why are you happy?
Mm-hmm.
And you have a really cool story.
Yes.
And so I was like,
Yes.
you're just like a normal person. And
Mm-hmm.
not that my other guests aren't normal, but a lot of my guests have businesses, or they've made some big pivot in life, and not that you haven't made a pivot, but a lot of them are growing a business, or they're
Right.
coaches, or
Right.
they have written a book, or they've done what some people would think, oh, that's a big thing. But what I love about you is you just simply took steps to be
Mm-hmm.
happier.
Mm-hmm. Yes. To live
Yeah.
the best version of myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wanted to I just met Karen. We just got on
Mm-hmm.
Zoom together, had about a 5-minute conversation. And I told her I like to not know much when I do these interviews. So I'm going to be learning along with my audience about, I mean, a little bit that I know is that you went on this big trip.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so tell me, where were you that made you want to take steps to improve your life, and share what you did, because what you did it all alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a
Solo.
pretty big deal.
Yes. Well, I have been on a lifelong journey for a very long time, it's particularly back in 2017 when I retired as an educator, and the death of my parents. And there was just a lot of soul searching, a lot of asking the big questions. And I've always been the type of person that asks the big questions and likes to kind of go deep. And I just felt over time, and this goes back previous to 2017, I wanted to, as I went through life, I wanted to make sure that I didn't shortchange myself, that I wanted to be the best version of myself. And I didn't want to be on the last days thinking, I wish I did this, or I should have, could have, or didn't do it because of somebody else. And the only way to do that is by asking yourself these questions. Why was I reacting in certain ways that I was reacting? Why was I living my life by the roles that were sort of dictated to me? And I think as children, I mean, we're kind of, this goes back a long ways. We are, in my case, it was a lot of people pleasing and playing certain roles that I thought were expected of me. And not that those roles were all bad. I have three really beautiful children because of it. I was a teacher. I've been married 44 years. But during that time, there's just a lot of growth that takes place. And so
Can I
as
interrupt
time
you for
went
a
on,
second? What kind
sure.
of did you teach? Elementary, high school?
I taught 31 years. I taught all elementary. I taught regular ed. And then in the last 8 years, I taught the gifted program. So it was two different types of thing, both of which was serving kids with that had a hard time learning, a lot of difficult times in their life, and there were a lot of obstacles in the way. But then also on the other spectrum, when I was teaching the gifted program, those kids too also had needs, because there was, by all the pressure put on teachers to meet the needs of the lower 25%, there were these other kids too that were just, well, they'll be okay because they're average or above average. And what I've learned is all the kids needed special attention and special needs and to be acknowledged. And what the beauty of teaching gifted, it was, I was still allowed to use the creativity that I love doing. So I was more of a facilitator.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
like people to relate to you. So do you mind sharing your age and the ages of your kids?
yes. I am 64, be 65 in February. I've got 3 children. I have a daughter that's 36, a son that's 33, and my youngest is 28. Yeah.
All adults,
And
all launched.
all adults, all launched, all doing well. My main thing is, are you happy? Are you growing? 2 of them live in other parts of the United States. One of my daughters and my grandson. I have a grandson that's 4 that live here.
And
So
where do you
yeah,
live?
St. Pete, Florida, on the west
Okay.
coast of Florida. Yeah.
All right. I was just in
Yes.
Florida last weekend, but
Yes.
the other side.
That's right, on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've lived
Yeah.
here a long time. And during this time, I lived out in Oregon for a little bit and up in the Northeast.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
tell me, I mean, a lot of people are curious about a marriage of 44 years. That's a long
Yes.
time to be with one person.
It
And
is a long time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we grow apart versus together.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so as you started to feel like, I want to expand, I want to do more things
Mm-hmm.
and learn more about myself, really. And you said
That's right.
2017. So where was he? What was that? Where was your relationship at the time? And was there anything, you said retirement was kind of leading you to what I find is a lot of people delay retirement because they don't know what they want to do. So what was
Right.
going through your head
And
around that time?
well, I did not want that to be me, because I do know people too that get into that retirement phase and it's now what, or they're so busy or consumed. And sometimes when I say busy, sometimes busyness can deter us from really looking deep within, because sometimes it's no fun to do, the work. But I started early on. It's my nature to do that. So in 2017, there was a lot going on with my parents with dementia, and I was still working full time, and I was fielding calls from my dad that forgot that I was working, and it was a really stressful time.
Yeah, a
But
teacher can't take phone calls very easy.
can't take phone calls, no. And he just didn't understand. So there was a lot going on the home front in that way. Just went through it and did what I had to do. And
So you
don't know
chose
what
to retire to help your parents? Was
I
that kind of
no, it was the plan. It was the
okay?
plan to retire right around that time. It wasn't
Oh,
because of
good.
my parents. No, I chose to retire. I was in the position to be able to do that. And during that whole transition, like I said, I was journaling. I had so many teachers on the outside through different podcasts, through Oprah Super Soul Sunday. I met
Oh, I
so many great
know.
people,
Did you
and then
watch
to
Oprah all the
also,
time? I just loved those
yes,
shows. Dr.
yes,
Phil, I could sit there and be like, "Oh my God, this
yeah.
is so fascinating."
She was phenomenal. And then to actually get to meet some of these people that I heard so much about. So my nose was in a lot of those kinds of books, and that inspired me to I just did a lot of questioning.
Do you
And there
remember when
was
The
one,
Secret came out?
that's when it started for me. Yeah,
Yeah. And what
actually,
about,
that's
did you
when it
watch
started.
her webinar with Eckhart Tolle? She did a on
Yes, I
Monday
did.
nights. I did too. We were probably on that webinar
Yes.
together.
Yes, I did. That was like the first big thing. But The Secret is what started it. And then the Now with Eckhart Tolle, and there was Deepak, and the list just goes on and on.
And so what was your
So
husband doing when you were doing all this personal
he
development?
was just like right along beside me. It wasn't like he was into watching the Oprah or anything like that, but it was more of me sharing. And what's interesting is me sharing, but then once I started to evolve, the people always say, what happens if you're involving and then maybe the spouse isn't actually doing the work? But in my case, it was like as I evolved, the relationship even got better, and he was along for the ride.
Yeah, he was getting a
So
better version of you.
yeah, yeah. And that was the whole thing, is becoming the better version, just to know more about myself, because I was so identified. And I think a lot of women can relate to just being identified by the roles. You're the mother, you're the teacher, the caregiver, the whatever the case may be. And it's, well, then who is Karen? Who am I at my soul level? What makes me tick? And so it was like an onion, it was peeling back the layers and asking the questions to figure out who I was, and
Yeah,
to
I
be the
love that
best
you
version of myself.
Yeah, I love that you recognized that. Well, the journey was to find your most authentic self, like
Right.
whoever that with take away all those roles.
That's
Who
right.
is Karen? And a lot of people do that. I think that in my case was true through divorce. I mean,
Right.
I'm not happy here. I need to break
Right.
away and do, and I love your example because it shows that you can stay where you are
You
and still
can.
find yourself and then be a better partner
That's
for
right.
somebody else. And I
Because
love
you know
that.
what? One of the biggest things through all of this is that there's nobody that could make me happy. If I could move to a new location, I could be married to somebody else, I could, new job, new this, new that. But it's like buying a new pair of shoes. Yeah, you're real happy with them, but then after a while that may wear off. So in
Yeah.
some cases, I mean, those things may be for somebody. For me, it was more about dealing with myself and realizing that the way I might have been reacting in the situation really had nothing to do with the other person. It was all my perception. It was stories, repetitive stories that I was telling myself. And it definitely forces you, if you allow it to, because like I said earlier, it's not the most fun thing to sometimes, because sometimes you go ahead a few steps and then you're back.
Yeah.
Byron Katie, she's an awesome author
Mm-hmm.
and speaker. She would say, I've listened to a few of her podcasts, I've read her books and stuff, but she would say it's almost like you look forward to an obstacle coming your way, because then you kind of test to see where you are. And it's another chance to do self inquiry. I'm sorry how to pronounce
Mm-hmm.
it. But anyway, to kind of look inside and having the tools to see it in a different way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. When I do the math, it's almost like the timing of you doing this was
Mm-hmm.
coinciding with your youngest. Did he go to college? And
Yes.
so 6 years
Yes.
ago, he would have been about 22. And did you find that transition from, even for me, when my kids were in college, it still wasn't like they were gone because they kept coming
Right.
home. They still had their
Mm-hmm.
bedrooms. And
Mm-hmm.
and then when the youngest graduated from college and moved out, that was like, whoa.
Right. As far as me, like doing the work on myself
Yeah, like
for
really
the walk.
diving. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it definitely led to that. There was like less distractions. I've always, for the longest time, when we talked about The Secret and Oprah, it was always an interest to me. It was mostly like self-help books, and those kinds of things just drew my attention. But certainly as years went on, the kids were gone, there was more of an effort to really to dig deep and just keep learning about myself.
so what's
So
the big thing you
definitely.
did that you told me about in the email?
So what I did last year in 2022 of May, I walked the Camino de Santiago, which it's called The Way. There was a movie written called The Way, but it's a pilgrimage, and there's different networks that take you to Santiago de Compostela, where supposedly, Apostle St. James is there. His shrine is there. So you can do the Camino Frances, you could do the Camino Portuguese. If you do the whole entire the Camino, it could take up to a month or so, or you can do sections. So what I did is I did the Camino Portuguese, which was the last 100 kilometers I crossed from Portugal into Spain, and I ended up at the Santiago de Compostela. And it was about, I don't know, 80 or so miles. I did it solo,
That's amazing.
meaning that I prepared for it. I got on the airplane, I flew over to Portugal, and then started the walk. And literally what you're doing is you're following yellow arrows along the way, and
I like
there's
the
other
Amazing
people.
Race.
Yeah, that's really
Except
what
that's
it
yellow
is.
and red or something. Yes.
Yes, yeah, but you're going at your own pace. You're either walking solo, but I met so many people from around the world, all different ages. So I thought when I was going, I wanted to do it solo, and I found myself, there were times where I was solo, but there were other times where I was walking with other people. So there's this thing they say, when you walk the Camino, you're never alone, and that's truly what it's
Mm.
all about. And you learn so much through this journey, from preparing for it and actually doing it.
So
It was
let's back up.
okay.
How'd you learn about it? And what made
So
you want to do it all by yourself? That
yeah,
is
well,
like so many people don't have the guts to do that. So
Right.
kudos to that. Yeah.
So, well, thank you. But I heard about it, I believe, from a coworker years ago, that she was talking about doing the Camino once she retired. And it kind of intrigued me. I ended up doing some research, but at that point in time, there was no way I was really ready for the Camino, which also brings me to the point too, that sometimes we may question, well, why am I not doing this now? Why didn't I do this back then? Is because I really wasn't ready to do that mentally. I wasn't in that mindset of being able to do something on my own as big as this. So
But the seed was planted.
the seed
Yeah.
was planted. The
Yeah.
seed was planted, and that's all it really took. And then coming to maybe like during COVID, I needed to do something, and I really wasn't sure what that was. And I was looking for maybe spiritual retreats, silent retreats. And again, during COVID time, there were a lot of things not happening. And then I remembered the Camino, and I started looking into it, and I said, this is what I want to do. Didn't know, have any idea how I was going to do it, how much it was going to cost, all of the logistics of it. But I knew it was something I just had to do. It was like, it became almost a celebration of my growth and where I was at that point in time. And I had the support of my husband. It led me to beautiful, like, Facebook groups of other women that were men and women. And there were also private Facebook groups of women. So you had that support there, and you could ask all the questions you wanted to. And then it just became planning it. And
But
so
now,
I
is
chose
it like
May.
camping, or do you have places to
No, what
back
you
out where
do,
you're going to stay along the
yes,
way? Okay.
you can go with a company. So for example, one of the companies is Camino Ways, and they'll arrange for your lodging. They'll tell you how many miles you can walk. They'll transport your luggage. They'll do
I have
that
those
for you.
kind of things. We did
Yes,
one in
yes.
Italy, like a walking self-guided, but it was only like 4 or 5 days. But yeah,
Right.
that
But
was great.
that's still a long time. So initially I was thinking of doing that, but I decided I was going to plan on my own. So I went through booking.com. I did use the suggested itinerary that these companies were using, so I could see the towns and where to start and stop. Some of them were doing like 17 miles a day, and I didn't want to do that. So I would look for a town in between, and I stayed in private rooms. I didn't stay in the huge, they call them albergues or hostels, because I didn't want to be surrounded with that many people and was still on the edge of COVID. So I chose to do private rooms with private bathrooms. I had a couple of apartments, and I had hotel rooms. So I had a variety of everything. And I carried,
Did you stay for a couple of nights at places, or did you just move on the next day?
no, I would walk, except when I got to Santiago, then I would stay there. I went there a couple of days, but the whole journey, it was getting up and walking each day, carrying my backpack. I never transported any luggage, which was a learning curve, because when we plan trips, I'm notorious for overpacking. But this time I just had my backpack. And I remember reading something on one of the Facebook groups. They said, it's when you're overpacking your fears. What if this happens? What if this
Oh,
happens?
yes.
And so you're just like, you're loading all of this weight on you. And it's literally your fears, because you're in that mindset. And I've also had people talking about fears. They would say, oh, Karen, you don't have any fear. And that was so not the case. I think with anything that you do that may be outside your comfort zone, there's going to be a sense of fear there, but it's working through it. It's not pushing it aside, trying to ignore it. It's acknowledging it's there, but then it's more in trusting yourself, and just you move forward. And that's what happened. I just kind of moved through any fear that might have come up. I had my rooms all planned out all the way to the end, which I had to change just a couple.
And how
But
long did that journey take you?
it took me about 9 days overall. I was there for 3 weeks, but when I went to Portugal, I stayed in Porto for a couple of days and just kind of worked my way out. And then the last week, I met up with my kids in Paris. It was my daughter's birthday. But the actual Camino itself was about 8 or 9 days.
Now, is it rigorous? Would you have to be in shape? Did you prepare like
I
walking?
did. I love nature is my baby. I love nature. It centers me. Whenever I'm out in nature, I'm reminded of really what do you need in life to be happy. And it clears my head. So for me, the walking was like really therapeutic. I wasn't, if you do the Camino Frances from like the very start, you're going over the Pyrenees Mountains. So I didn't have any of that. There was some inclines and declines. There was a lot of cobblestone. So I did not want to fall. And I love taking pictures. So I would have to really watch what I was doing, but it wasn't really rigorous. I mean, I did maybe 8 to maybe 10 miles, somewhere in there. You could do less if you want. The longest day was 14. And that was it was warmer. So that was pretty tough.
Did you ever have rain where you had to deal with the rain?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Just wore a poncho. That was
Yeah.
actually one of my best days. I met up with people from Poland and Luxembourg, and we just had a group that we were walking together, and it was raining and my poncho was going all over the place. But it was the most fun. And they had different stops along the way. You go through vineyards, you can be on highway, but I tried to avoid that, through little towns and villages. There were a couple of times where as I'm following the arrows, and then I turned off and went the wrong way. And then I heard the loud yelling in the background, and there were two women, from elderly women, screaming from the top of their apartment, telling me to go the other way. So it restores humanity. I mean, there's so many wonderful people there. I did hook up. There was a woman that I met through the Facebook group. She's from the Philippines, but lives in California. And so we ended up, it was almost like a security blanket. Like we both wanted to go solo, but it was nice knowing somebody was going at the same time. So we ended up meeting up the last 3 days with her. And then we went into Santiago together.
That is so nice. One of the
yes.
things that I remember from your email is you said, I learned so much about myself.
I did.
And I'd love to know what you learned from that experience and that journey.
Well, things always work out. I mean, they just always work out. I needed to catch a train, and I got confused on which train station to go to. And then by asking questions, and it worked out. I even ended up having more time than I needed, which worked out beautifully. So no matter what obstacle came into play, things just work out. And I think sometimes we talk ourselves out of doing things because of the fear and what if, and we go through the stories and we realize that things do work out, that we're much more capable than we ever thought we could be. And that underneath all of that stuff, there's just this person that's ready to shine and bloom and walk into just a wonderful life without being held back by our own restrictions. So yeah, I learned that things work out. I'm capable, and then I enjoy. We talk about who our tribe is, right? People, and I met people that I just met for the first time, but then they were like-minded, and so I realized how really important that is to have people. You surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that are inspirational to you. And by their stories, they were all different ages, and people in wheelchairs doing this. There was people with their young children, and it was just such an eye opener of what's available out there. And sometimes we get stuck, I think, in our four walls, thinking that this is it. And while you may be having that happy, contented life, is it really the most magnificent version of yourself? Is it? I don't know. Those are things that it's not to say that people have to do a Camino to have an amazing life. That's not what I'm saying. But it just for myself, it's about thriving outside my comfort zone and pushing myself out there. And I knew I wanted to do it. There wasn't anything that was going to stop me. I had friends that were super supportive, and others thought that was everything okay with you and your husband, that you're doing this, or something bad could happen to you. And there's not to judge them for their comments, because they're coming from a place of what we know. But for me,
their comfort zone.
And their comfort zone. So yes. Yeah. And
I'm sure you inspired them too. They're probably thinking, if she could do it,
yeah.
What can I do?
I do have some friends that I have one right now that is traveling for a year. I mean, just doing like really amazing things. And there's nothing better, as you do in your daily life, about inspiring others really be their best and to go after themselves and really know who they are. The Camino, it checked all my boxes. If you had 100 people in a room, you might get 100 different reasons why people walk the Camino. Spiritual reasons, empty nesters, a lot of those, going through divorce, wanted the adventure, being in nature, meeting new people, the adventure, nature, meeting new people, and really going outside my comfort zones. It was check, check.
Yeah.
So,
I love that you did it without needing to be with someone, because I think a
right,
lot of people get held back because they want to do something and they think
right,
they need to have somebody with them. And
right.
then for whatever reason, somebody backs out or somebody won't commit or whatever.
Right.
And what they're doing too is they're not thinking about, it's like, what if I'm all alone versus what if I meet somebody that's my new best friend?
Right. It's all turning the mindset. There was the route that I did, it was the central route walking through Spain. And there was a variant, it's called the spiritual variant, I think. And it was where you could get off the main road and kind of go out into the wilderness, into the forest. And so that's what I did. And it was absolutely magical. It was something out of fantasy world. I mean, eucalyptus forests, and it was just amazing. And so there were a couple other hikers a little bit in front of me, and I'm distracted because I'm taking my pictures or whatever. And they go way ahead of me. And I get to the end and I'm not seeing the yellow arrow. And so my mind, if we allow it to, the mind took me to all those places, right? It was just like taking over. Oh, you're lost, this and that. And then it was like regaining no. Right. And I remembered the river's on this side. It'll be perfectly fine, and keep going. But the mindset can play with you. I can't do this by myself when doing all of the what ifs. So yeah.
That's great. I love
Yeah.
that your husband was fine with it, because I would imagine a spouse would be worried about somebody
Yeah.
going off on their own, traveling this
Yeah.
trail, and who knows
Yes.
what might come up. But yeah, I love that.
He was
Yeah.
very supportive, very encouraging.
So
And
I have another
go ahead.
question.
Sure.
So when you have a big goal and then you set out and you achieve what you set out to do, sometimes there's a little bit of a letdown. And then there's like, how can I top this? So I'd love to know how you felt when it was done. Were you sad or were you elated? What was going on through your mind? And what is the next big thing that you want to do?
It was a little bit of both. I mean, it was sad in the fact that it was done. I was at the very end of what I set out to do, but it was just amazing to me that I completed it. It was such a satisfying accomplishment that I did. It was everything and more than I thought it would be.
It
So when I
always
was
is,
done,
isn't it? We
yes,
have these dreams
yes,
and it works out so much better in the end than we
it
can, because we
did.
can't imagine that good.
No,
Yeah.
no. I mean, you can read other people's stories, and on the Camino, on the Facebook groups, there were so many testimonials to what their trip and everything was like. But, again, to you, it's like hands on. Until you experience it and walk it, do you really know how you're going to feel? And there's it wasn't just the Camino was over and I was done. There was a lot of reflection coming back. Because, I mean, after coming off such a high and then you coming back into your regular life again, there's a lot of reflection, and I'm a reflector and I'm a journaler, and what I learned, I knew that I wanted to do another something. I love adventure and I love travel. And so I travel with my husband, but I get the itch to go off on my own and do something. I didn't do anything this past year, but I'm going to do a second Camino in 24, a whole different route. So that's something that I look forward to. And then many other, whatever comes my way. And I think that's the beauty of it. It's having the freedom to, that you're the author of your life and you can do whatever it is that you want to do. It may not be going on, it may be visiting a different town you've never been to in your own state, or trying a new hobby, or anything that can expand yourself. And so my word, I don't know if you're familiar with coming up with a word. My word for 2023 was expansion.
Oh, yeah. Of
And
course, I'm
and
familiar with
yes,
words.
yes.
Yes.
So I
I
pick,
love that.
it's picking a word and I really stuck with it. And it's like asking myself, doing check-ins with myself. Am
Hmm.
I expanding today or this week? How am I expanding my mind, my body, my thoughts? And so it kind of kept me in check to just keep exploring and keep learning. I mean, here I am, like I said, on the podcast talking to you, and I've listened to you for a very long time on those walks sometimes. So, yeah, I
Well,
don't
yeah.
know,
And you
there's
said
always
before I
something.
hit record, you said that you found something recently that you had written
Yeah.
down that you
Yeah. I'll share it if you don't
some we
mind. You want me?
forget what we want sometimes.
Right.
And then once it happens, then we find something where we had written it down and don't even realize we had actually manifested it.
Right. I was going through my journals, and it was right around the time prior to, I think this was like before I went on the Camino. But so again, I journal all kinds of stuff. So I'll read just its very short part. But this part says, be you, be truth, be pure. Every day, ask yourself, is this the life that I want? Know your wants, which is very important. Otherwise, you'll live life on autopilot. Yes, I'm blessed, and who knows what the universe has in store for me. More adventures, more love, more truth, more laughs, more smiles, more peace, more present, more Karen living authentically. I love you, Karen. Have a great day. Oh, and you will be featured on a podcast one day. And and here I am. It's here I am just talking with you, and it's just putting out in the universe, speaking kindly to yourself. And you just don't know what
Mm,
life has in store for you.
that's beautiful. And it's
Yeah.
funny when I reached out to you and said, why don't you come on my podcast? Because I think you would be so inspiring. And you were so willing to do it. I was expecting a little bit of I've never done a podcast before, an
No,
episode.
I was looking forward to it, and not so much of an egotistical kind of way at all. It's the thrill of talking to like-minded people, sharing experiences, inspiring others. I mean, you talk about what lights you up. And for me, that lights me up because when I'm the best version of myself, I mean, you can walk into a room and feel the energy of the people around you or speaking with somebody. And when you're lighting yourself up and taking care of yourself, that's going to spread out all around
Yeah,
in more ways than we realize.
I love
So
that.
yeah,
The other thing
yeah,
that I like too is that, and this is really how manifestation happens often, is
right.
you didn't ask to be, that was not your intention at all. There was,
No,
and even when I said, oh, you should be, there was never any, I don't even think you thought of that. And
right.
so the fact that I
Not when I
asked
wrote.
you, it was like, oh my gosh, of
You
course the
did.
universe is conspiring to help you. And it makes it, the universe, it's really easy when you just
Yeah,
believe the universe will be your
it,
guide. Yeah.
the universe will be your guide. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just putting it out there and knowing what your wants are, and having trust and faith and
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people, and you spoke to the busyness of life. I think
Yes.
a lot of people don't know what they want because they don't take the
No.
time.
No.
And then I think a lot of times they convince themselves that they shouldn't want anything more to be had. Like gratitude, be grateful for what you have and don't want more. But being in a state of gratitude doesn't mean you shouldn't want more. It
Right.
just means you're
As women,
content. Yeah.
yeah, as women, we were kind of trained not to want more.
Right.
And like for me, being married, love being a grandma to my grandson and my children and all that. In my teaching career, all were very important to me. However, adding on to that, there was also Karen, and that for myself, I needed to discover who I was. I recognized that there were certain patterns that I was living that I really needed to examine, and I chose to examine. And that was probably one of the best things and hardest things that I've ever done, was to do. And I'm still continuing on the journey. It doesn't mean it's every day. It's every
Mm-hmm.
day checking in. But there's so much when you take the time to really do the work, and there's so much light on the other side. Because again, going back to the Camino, which brought me to your podcast, that would never have happened years ago. I don't, like I told you, I think I mentioned earlier in our talk that it was just not on my radar. I was busy doing the things that I was doing, the roles I was playing. And so, but if I hadn't gone to the places and questioned myself and did the healing that I need to heal, I would never have gone on that Camino. So it's all in the timing, and it's never. After the Camino, I was writing something, and it's just one of the biggest things I would say is it's just never too late. And it's no matter what your age, no matter what your fears are, it's never too late. And you have to believe that, to know that in your heart that it's never too late. There's so many, speaking to women in particular, there's so many things that they want to do and that will light them up.
Mm-hmm.
It's just taking the time to listen to yourself. Nature, for me, I mean, that does it. And to pursue them.
Yeah, that's great. So you said you want to go on the Camino again. What do you do in your day to day? I mean, how are you living your retirement life in St. Pete?
So day to day, I have certain rituals that I do. Have my morning lemon water and all that stuff in the morning. I do long walks. I either go solo or with a friend. I love trying to keep working out, spending time with family and friends. I'm a dancer. I love going out and dancing. I got a good community of friends I do that with. It's funny because my mom would always say, I'd say, Mom, what are you doing this weekend? She'd say, well, I'm going out with the group. We're going to go local with the group. And then it dawned on me like months ago, like I'm one of those people that have a group that we go out, we listen to music. I write and post positive quotes, go bowling.
I love that. I love
whatever. But again, it's like tuning if something feels right, you're on the right track. Mm-hmm. And when I'm not feeling good, or I start getting edgy or irritated, that's a sign that's telling me, Karen, okay, what is it that you're not doing? There's something that you're not fulfilling, that you're not getting lit up. And I look at it and I know what makes me tick, and I'll go do it. I just love being outside, adventures, travel.
I love that.
Go visit my kids. So yeah.
I know. So what, and let's finish with this question.
Okay.
Because I have a few questions that I like to ask, and I'm like, okay, which one should I ask Karen? And what I think I'd like to know, because it seems like you've really come into your own in the latter part of your life.
Yes.
What is the advice that the 64-year-old Karen would have given her younger self?
I would say to love yourself, and to know that you're a beautiful human being. You are pure love, and to love yourself first, not to expect it from the outside, that you have to love yourself first, and that everything's going to be okay. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people sometimes don't think everything's going to be okay. I love that. How simple. Hard. What a simple thought. Everything's going to be okay. We want to control everything. We want to go, but if you just sit and be still, and have that thought, I think that's beautiful.
It gets when you're in the controlling other people. I mean, you can't really control anybody else. If you put all your energy into changing somebody, controlling somebody, think about all that energy that is being wasted. It's like, where are you putting your energy every day? And if I'm putting energy into gossip or into drama, I've never been that type of person. In school situations with teachers and coworkers, if there was any drama, cliques, I kind of wanted to go the other way. So it's really, I mean, it's really hard. You only can control your own thoughts.
Yep.
And yeah. And you're really not your thoughts.
Yeah.
You really.
Yeah. And I think that some people might think, oh, everything's going to be okay. How can you think that when you don't have control over other people? And I think it's part of what you said in the very beginning is it's your thoughts and your mindset.
Right.
And the more
thoughts
you
and your,
tell yourself everything's going to be okay, the more you'll
yeah,
start to believe everything's going to
the
be okay.
more you start to believe it. It's like saying you want to be 100 pounds and you're 200 pounds. You have to, even if you don't believe it, that I am this, you say it anyway. It's like the mantras. What do you tell yourself every day? Which is really an interesting thing. If you think about it, what are the thoughts and things that you're telling yourself? So
Yeah.
even if you don't believe it, if you don't believe things are not going to be okay, keep telling yourself it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Just keep
Yeah.
telling yourself that. And the more
Every
you
day.
can, every day, the more
Don't
you can
skip a day.
focus,
Yeah.
no, focus on yourself
Yeah.
and making yourself okay,
Yeah.
then that energy and so forth will reach out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. You did
Thank
such a
you.
great job in your first podcast
Well, thank
episode
you,
or
Lori.
interview. You're just going to have to go do more
Yeah,
and
exactly.
inspire
Thank you
other
so
people.
much. Thanks for
Yes.
inspiring me and thank you for all you do. That's
Yes.
awesome.
I
It's
love
great to meet
meeting
with,
my people that are on the other side of my email. It's
yeah,
nice to know
yeah.
that I'm not just writing to know.
I read your stuff. Yeah,
Good,
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Well,
All
thanks
right,
so
Lori.
much.
All
All
right, you
right.
take care. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Living Your Spark Second Half podcast. If you'd like to watch my guest interviews, you can find the video version of this podcast on my Not Your Average Grandma YouTube channel. Also, you can check out what I have going on at the moment by going to my website at notyouraveragegrandma.com or find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you like this episode, please mention it to a friend and don't forget to leave a review so I know the topics you like best and can bring you more of that content in upcoming episodes. Last but not least, remember to always listen to that inner voice that will never steer you wrong and make living from the most sparked place possible your biggest priority. When we do that, we make the world a better place.